By the time anyone realized what the bin collector had become, it was already too late. People on Oak Ridge Street woke up to the sound of screaming, real, terrified screaming, and when neighbors ran outside, they saw him dragging a man across the pavement, biting into his shoulder like an animal. His uniform was still on, his orange vest smeared with dirt and something darker, and his eyes were wide and empty, like he didn't even know he was human anymore. He lifted his head, mouth dripping, and stared at the crowd behind him. Then he ran toward them. That's when everyone understood something was very, very wrong. And just as his body leaped forward, the chapter cuts to what happened earlier that morning. His name was Evan Turner, a quiet 42-year-old bin collector who worked for the city's sanitation department. Everyone in the neighborhood liked him. He waved at kids waiting for the school bus and always stopped to help older people get their trash bins to the curb. Evan was the type of man who seemed tired but kind, someone who worked hard and minded his business. But on this morning, something unusual happened. It began behind Milton's grocery store, where the dumpsters sat in a quiet alley. Evan lifted a heavy bin, tipped it into the back of the garbage truck, and that's when he noticed it. A black bag at the bottom of the dumpster, twisting, like something inside was moving. At first he thought it was a raccoon. He sighed, climbed into the dumpster, and pulled the bag open. Inside wasn't an animal. It was a cluster of small, pale hands. Human hands, not attached to anything, just cold hands piled on top of each other, like someone had cut them off and thrown them away. Evan stumbled backward, falling inside the dumpster, his heartbeat pounding so loud he couldn't hear anything else. Then one of the hands twitched. Evan screamed, scrambling to escape, but before he could climb out, one of the hands shot upward and grabbed his wrist, its grip ice cold and impossibly strong. Evan kicked and pulled, but his foot slipped, and the hand crawled up his arm, digging into his skin like tiny claws. He threw himself out of the dumpster, landing hard on the concrete. The hand fell off and lay still, but a black smear remained on Evan's wrist like ink sinking into his veins. He wanted to run. He wanted to call someone, but his body suddenly felt heavy, like his bones were turning to sand. His head spun, his heartbeat slowed, and he felt something crawling under his skin, something cold, something alive. Evan staggered back to his truck. His partner, Tommy, asked if he was okay. Evan didn't answer. He just stared at Tommy with empty, unfocused eyes. For the rest of the morning, Evan worked without speaking. He didn't laugh, didn't wave at anyone. He didn't even seem to blink. Tommy kept asking if he needed medical help, but Evan just kept lifting bins and dumping them like nothing was wrong. Until noon. That's when Tommy heard Evan making a strange noise, low and wet, almost like growling. He turned to look and saw Evan clutching his arm, his veins turning dark blue, spreading across his neck, crawling toward his face. "Evan, we need to go to the hospital," Tommy said. Evan didn't respond. He just lifted his head slowly, his pupils gone, replaced by a cloudy gray. Then he opened his mouth wider than a human should be able to. Tommy stumbled back. "Jesus, Evan." Evan took one step forward, then another, then he lunged. Tommy screamed as Evan bit down on his shoulder, teeth sinking into flesh like he had been starving for days. Tommy fell, kicking and pushing, but Evan didn't stop. He didn't speak. He didn't even breathe. He just bit. Again, and again, and again. Neighbors nearby heard the screams. People rushed out of their houses. And that's when they saw Evan standing over Tommy, blood running down his chin, his chest rising and falling like an animal hunting. Someone yelled, "Call 911." But as they ran, Evan's head snapped in their direction. His mouth opened wider. And then, he ran after them. Fast. Evan sprinted toward the group of neighbors with a speed no one had ever seen from him before. His boots slammed the pavement so hard the ground seemed to vibrate. The people who had come outside to help Tommy froze for a second, unable to understand how a normal man, someone they saw every morning, could move like a wild animal. Evan's arms hung stiff, his fingers bent at strange angles, and his mouth stayed open as he ran, like he wanted to bite the first person he reached. The group scattered. Mrs. Halpern tripped over her mailbox. Two teenagers jumped over a fence. A man carrying his toddler dropped his coffee and bolted toward his car. Evan didn't care who he chased. His cloudy gray eyes locked onto the nearest body. He lunged at a man named Travis, grabbing the back of his shirt and dragging him to the ground. Travis screamed and tried to push Evan off, but Evan's strength was inhuman, as if something inside him had taken over his muscles completely. Evan opened his mouth wide. But before he could bite, a loud voice shouted, "Hey, stop!" It was Officer Daniels, who had just arrived for his morning patrol. He pulled his taser and fired it straight into Evan's side. Sparks flew. Evan's body jerked violently and collapsed onto the pavement. But he wasn't unconscious. He lifted his head slowly, eyes rolling up until only the whites were visible. Officer Daniels stepped back, terrified. What is wrong with you?" Evan growled. Not a human sound, not even close. Daniels reached for his radio. "This is Officer Daniels. I need backup on Oak Ridge Street. Possible violent subject. I don't know what he is." But before he could finish his sentence, Evan stood up. The taser wires were still attached, and he didn't even feel them. He walked toward the officer one step at a time, each step heavier than the last, the black veins crawling now across his entire neck and cheeks. "Stop right there," Daniels shouted, pointing the taser again. Evan didn't stop. Daniels fired the second shot. The darts hit Evan square in the chest. But Evan didn't fall. He didn't flinch. He just kept walking. The officer, terrified, drew his baton and swung it with all the strength he had. The metal stick connected with Evan's shoulder. Crack, but not Evan's bone. The baton bent. Daniels dropped it, staring in disbelief. Evan didn't waste a second. He grabbed the officer by the vest and pulled him close, his mouth opening wider than before, the veins now glowing faintly under his skin. Daniels pushed against his chest, struggling to breathe. "Let go! Let go!" But Evan leaned in, until his teeth touched the officer's collarbone. Daniels screamed. Suddenly, a loud horn blasted through the air, a garbage truck. Tommy, half-conscious and bleeding from the shoulder, had crawled back into the truck and slammed his hand onto the horn. The sound echoed through the entire neighborhood. Evan jerked his head toward the noise instantly, releasing the officer and stumbling back like the horn hurt him. Tommy shouted from the truck window, voice shaking. "Evan, please, stop. It's me." For a moment, a very short moment, Evan hesitated. His cloudy eyes flickered. His jaw twitched, as if the human part of him was trying to come back. Tommy reached his hand out the window. "Evan, listen, we can get help. You don't have to." But then Evan's face twisted. His lips peeled back, and he let out a deep, animalistic roar so loud it shook the truck windows. The sound wasn't human anymore, and it wasn't struggling. It was calling something. Daniels, still on the ground, managed to whisper, "Oh God, he's summoning more of them." Before Tommy or Daniels could move, Evan turned his head sharply toward the forest behind the neighborhood. Something moved in the shadows. Multiple things. Then, Evan sprinted toward the trees at full speed, disappearing into the darkness. Tommy shouted, "No, Evan!" But Evan didn't stop. He was running toward something, or someone. Officer Daniels looked at Tommy and said in a shaking voice, "We need to warn everyone. He's not alone anymore." And before Tommy could answer, a dark figure stepped out from the forest edge. Then another, all moving like Evan, all with the same black veins, all coming toward the neighborhood. Officer Daniels froze as the figures stepped out of the forest, slow, jerking movements, heads tilted, veins glowing faintly under their skin. There were 3 at first, then 5, then more. They walked like Evan did, with heavy uneven steps, empty gray eyes, and mouths slightly open as if smelling something in the air. Tommy, still slumped in the garbage truck, stared in horror. Daniels, they are like him. They are all like him. Daniels swallowed hard. No, they are worse. Because unlike Evan, these ones were already watching the neighborhood, studying the streets, scanning every door, every window, every human they saw. The first creature turned its head toward the sound of crying. A mother on her porch held her little boy, backing into her house. Another creature snapped its gaze toward a man shouting and waving his arms. They were choosing who to chase. Daniels pulled Tommy up, helping him stand. "We need to get inside. Now." But Tommy shook his head weakly. "No, I can't just hide. Evan's out there." He tried to hold on. "Daniels." For a second, he remembered me. Daniels grabbed Tommy by the collar. "He bit you, Tommy. He would have killed you. Whatever he is now. Evan Turner died in that dumpster." Tommy's eyes watered. He didn't argue. But just as they moved toward the nearest house, someone screamed. Not a short scream. A long, terrified, soul-shaking scream that echoed across the neighborhood. One of the creatures had grabbed a jogger who had been running on the corner. It yanked him to the ground and bit into his leg before anyone could react. The man kicked wildly, crawling away, but the creature crawled after him like an animal. Daniels raised his gun. "Get away from him." He fired. The bullet hit the creature's shoulder, its body jerked. But it didn't fall. It simply turned its head slowly toward Daniels, like it was annoyed, not hurt. "Run!" Daniels yelled to everyone nearby. Everyone inside now. People rushed into houses, slamming doors and locking them. Curtains closed one by one down the street. But the creatures didn't stop. They didn't even speed up. They just walked forward like they knew nobody could escape. Tommy clutched his bitten shoulder, panting. "Why are they coming here? Why this place?" Daniels pointed at the forest. Something in those woods. Something that made them. Tommy's eyes widened. Evan ran that way. Before Daniels could reply, a loud bang echoed from the forest. A tree snapped in half. Then Evan stepped out from the darkness. Only he wasn't like before. His veins glowed brighter. His bones cracked as he moved. And his jaw hung lower, like it could unhinge. When he saw Tommy, he stopped. His gray eyes flickered again, just like earlier. For a tiny moment, Evan looked almost human again, breathing heavily, shaking, like he was fighting whatever was inside him. "Evan," Tommy whispered. "Please." Evan took a slow step forward. Then another. Daniels raised his gun. "Tommy, get back." But Tommy didn't move. He stepped toward Evan. "Evan, it's me. I'm your partner. Don't let this thing control you. Please, don't do this." Evan trembled. His fingers twitched. His breathing shook. For the first time, he whispered something raspy, broken. "Help, me." Tommy gasped. "You're still in there." Daniels lowered his gun slightly. But then, Evan's body jerked violently. His head snapped to the side. His back arched unnaturally. And he let out a roar so loud it shook the windows of every house. It wasn't Evan anymore. Creatures around him roared back, answering their leader. Evan lunged. Tommy barely jumped back as Evan slammed into the spot where he had been standing. His claws, because they were no longer fingers, scraped the pavement. Daniels grabbed Tommy. "We have to go now." They ran toward the nearest house, banging on the door. "Open up." Inside, someone unlocked it and pulled them in. Just as they shut the door, the creatures hit the porch, slamming their bodies against the wood. The walls shook. Windows rattled. The family inside screamed and moved furniture against the door. Tommy backed away, breathing fast. "Daniels is going to break in. He knows we're here." Daniels peered out the window. Dozens of creatures had surrounded the house. And Evan stood in front, staring directly at Tommy through the glass. Not with hunger, but with purpose. As if he was choosing him. Daniels whispered, "Why is he focused on you?" Tommy shook his head. "I don't know." But deep down, he did. Because earlier that morning, when Evan was first infected by the crawling hand, Tommy did something he hadn't told anyone. He grabbed Evan's arm to pull him out of the dumpster. His skin touched the black veins, and some of it moved to him. Tommy's veins, under the bandage, pulsed faintly. "I think," he whispered, voice breaking, "I think I'm changing too." Daniels stepped back. "Tommy, no. Tell me this isn't true." But Tommy didn't answer. He simply lifted his shirt slightly, and the dark, branching veins spread across his ribs like ink crawling under his skin. Outside, Evan growled, and every creature turned toward the house at the same time. Tommy whispered, "They are coming for me."